The air on Outpost Nova 7 always carried the same sense: scorching heat, metallic dust, and machine oil. Lieutenant Arlo Reyes had grown accustomed to it over the past 6 months, though he still missed the ocean breeze of his coastal hometown on Earth. He adjusted the collar of his tactical uniform, feeling sweat trickle down his spine as he prepared for the morning briefing with Squad Terrak. The squad consisted of 8 Terrak warriors, towering, blue-skinned humanoids with muscles that seemed to ripple beneath their scaled skin. Earth's United Alliance had established this forward base to foster cooperation between species. But Arlo sometimes wondered if the higher-ups had considered the cultural clash that would inevitably occur. As Earth's tactical advisor, Arlo was responsible for integrating human strategic thinking with Terrak combat prowess. On paper, it was a prestigious assignment. In reality, it meant daily confrontations with a warrior culture that valued physical might above all else. Arlo took a deep breath and entered the briefing room. The temperature inside was set higher than human comfort to accommodate Terrak physiology. 8 pairs of amber eyes turned toward him, their expressions ranging from indifference to barely concealed contempt. At the head of the table stood Captain Kira Terrak, squad leader and daughter of a renowned Terrak general. She stood nearly 7 feet tall, her blue skin decorated with ritual scarification that denoted her battle prowess. Her head crest, a series of hardened cartilage spines, was fully extended, a sign of alertness or aggression. Arlo could never quite tell which with her. "Lieutenant Reyes," she acknowledged, her voice a low rumble. "You're late." Arlo checked his timepiece. "I'm 3 minutes early, Captain." "Terrak warriors arrived 10 minutes before scheduled time," she replied. "Another example of human weakness." The squad chuckled, a sound like rocks grinding together. Arlo maintained his composure and approached the tactical display. "I've analyzed the reconnaissance data from yesterday's patrol," he began, activating the holographic map. "The insurgent activity has shifted to the western quadrant. Their pattern suggests—" "We don't need patterns," interrupted Sergeant Vork, Kira's second-in-command. "We need to crush them with overwhelming force." Kira nodded. "The sergeant speaks truth. Your human tactics involve too much waiting, too much thinking." She approached Arlo, towering over him. Her scent, something like cinnamon and copper, intensified. "You suggest we hide and watch while they grow stronger?" "I suggest we understand their movements to minimize casualties on both sides," Arlo replied evenly. "The western approach has limited cover, and they're snipers." "Listen to him," Kira announced to her squad, circling Arlo like prey. "Always concerned with safety, always worried about casualties." She stopped directly in front of him, her amber eyes locked on his. "This is what Earth sends us, a weak male who fears combat." The words stung more than Arlo expected. The squad's laughter felt like physical blows. "Caution isn't weakness, Captain," Arlo said, keeping his voice steady. "And strategic planning isn't fear." "Prove it," Kira challenged. "Join us in combat training today. Show us these strategic skills." Arlo knew it was a trap. Terrak combat training was notoriously brutal, designed for beings with twice human strength and regenerative capabilities humans lacked. But refusing would only confirm her assessment. "I accept," he said simply. Surprise flickered across Kira's features before she masked it with a smirk. "Then we shall see what Earth's tactics are worth in real combat." The training arena was a circular pit of red sand, surrounded by metallic walls. Various weapons hung on racks, most designed for Terrak physiology, and too heavy for the average human to wield effectively. The squad had gathered around the perimeter, eager to watch their captain humiliate the human advisor. Arlo entered wearing lightweight combat gear, rather than the heavy armor the Terraks preferred. He'd chosen a simple shock baton, a defensive weapon that could deliver a non-lethal electrical charge. Kira had selected a traditional Terrak fighting staff, a 6-foot length of dense metal alloy with blunted ends for training. Combat training has simple rules, Kira announced. Victory comes through incapacitation or surrender. No permanent injuries, she added, looking pointedly at her squad. Arlo took a defensive stance, aware that his only advantages were speed and tactical thinking. Kira moved with surprising grace for her size, her staff whirling in complex patterns designed to intimidate. She struck first, a powerful downward blow that would have crushed Arlo's shoulder had he not sidestepped. The staff hit the sand with enough force to send up a cloud of red dust. Kira snarled, pivoting faster than Arlo anticipated. The end of her staff caught him in the ribs, sending him stumbling backward. Pain blossomed in his side. Nothing broken, but there would be a spectacular bruise. The squad roared their approval. "First blood to Kira!" shouted Vork. Arlo regained his footing, reassessing. Direct engagement was suicide. He needed to change the parameters. Kira charged again, her staff sweeping in a horizontal arc. Arlo ducked beneath it and rolled toward the wall, where environmental controls were embedded. With a quick strike of his baton, he triggered the overhead sprinklers. Water poured down, turning the arena's sand into slick mud. The Terak's heavier bodies and momentum-based fighting style were suddenly disadvantages. Kira slipped slightly, her next blow missing Arlo by inches. "Clever trick," she growled, "but it won't save you." "It's not a trick," Arlo replied, circling her carefully. "It's tactical adaptation." He waited for her next attack, then used her momentum against her. As she lunged forward, he sidestepped and tapped his shock baton against the wet metal of her staff. The electrical current conducted perfectly, delivering a jarring, though not dangerous, shock to Kira's hands. She dropped the staff with a roar of pain and surprise. The arena fell silent. Arlo moved quickly, retrieving her weapon and holding both his baton and her staff. "Adaptation, Captain, not weakness." For a moment, rage contorted Kira's features. Then, unexpectedly, she laughed, a deep, genuine sound that caught her squad off guard. "You fight like a venomous crawler," she said, rubbing her numbed hands. Small, but effective. It wasn't exactly a compliment, but it was acknowledgement. Arlo returned her staff with a formal bow, a Terak gesture of respect between combatants. "Perhaps there is something to your tactics," she admitted grudgingly, "though I still question your physical prowess." The training session ended with an uneasy truce. Arlo had neither won decisively nor been defeated, and the Teraks seemed unsure how to categorize this outcome. As they filed out of the arena, Kira lingered behind. "You surprised me, Lieutenant," she said, her voice lower than usual. "That rarely happens." Before Arlo could respond, alarms blared throughout the outpost. Red emergency lights bathed the corridor in crimson. "Water purification system failure," announced the automated system. 50% capacity reduction. All non-essential usage restricted. Kira frowned. "Second system failure this week. First communications, now water." "Coincidence seems unlikely," Arlo noted. "We should investigate." For once, Kira didn't argue. "My thoughts exactly." The water purification center was a maze of pipes and filtration tanks, usually humming with efficient activity. Now, half the systems were shut down, and technicians scrambled to identify the problem. "Chief Engineer," Kira addressed a harried-looking human technician. "Report." "Something's corrupted the automated cycling protocols," the engineer explained, pointing to a diagnostic screen. "The system keeps shutting down key filtration stages, and we have to manually override each time." "Sabotage?" Arlo asked. "Looks that way," the engineer nodded. "But the access logs show nothing unusual. Whoever did this knew our systems." Kira's head crest flattened against her skull, a sign of concern among her species. Water is life on a desert planet. This threatens everyone. "The communication disruptions last week followed a similar pattern," Arlo observed. examining the diagnostic readouts. Subtle corruption of automated systems, rather than obvious damage. Inside job? Kira suggested. Possibly. Or someone with access to our security protocols. Arlo tapped through several screens of data. We need to check the physical infrastructure. The software disruption might be distracting us from direct tampering. They spent hours inspecting the facility, finding nothing obvious until Arlo noticed a slight discoloration on one of the main intake pipes. This has been recently sealed, he said, running his hand over the surface. Professionally done, but the alloy doesn't quite match. Kira examined it closely, then drew a ceremonial knife from her belt and scraped at the seam. A small device was embedded within, barely larger than a thumbnail. Monitoring device, Arlo identified, carefully extracting it. Military grade, but not Alliance standard issue. Black market tech, Kira growled. Someone is selling information about our water supply. Or preparing to contaminate it, Arlo added grimly. Their eyes met in shared understanding. The outpost housed over 300 personnel, human, Terrak, and several other species. A compromised water supply could be catastrophic. We need to check every system, Kira decided. Quietly. Agreed. If the saboteur realizes we're onto them, they might accelerate their plans. They assembled a small team, 2 trusted Terrak warriors and 2 human engineers, sworn to secrecy. Over the next 3 days, they discovered similar devices planted throughout critical infrastructure, power distribution, air filtration, and security networks. Whoever's doing this has extensive access, Arlo observed during a private meeting with Kira in his quarters. These aren't random targets. They're systematically mapping our vulnerabilities. Kira paced the small room, her large frame making the space seem even more confined. We have a traitor among us. But who benefits? Arlo spread out a digital map showing the locations of all discovered devices. This isn't typical insurgent behavior. They usually want immediate impact, not long-term surveillance. Resource theft, Kira suggested, stopping her pacing. Desert planets have scarce resources. Water, minerals, technology, all valuable on the black market. That would explain the pattern, Arlo agreed. They're identifying the optimal times to siphon resources without triggering alarms. Kira's amber eyes narrowed. We need to catch them in the act. They set a trap, deliberately creating a vulnerability in the secondary water storage facility while secretly monitoring it with their own surveillance. For 2 nights, nothing happened. On the 3rd night, their patience was rewarded. Arlo and Kira watched the security feed from a darkened monitoring station as a figure in an Alliance security uniform entered the facility. The officer moved with practiced efficiency, bypassing security measures and attaching a small device to the outflow control panel. Security Officer Dayton, Arlo identified, his voice tight with anger. Head of Resource Management Security. Perfect position for theft, Kira growled. He has access to everything valuable. They moved quietly through the outpost, approaching the water facility from opposite directions to cut off potential escape routes. As they neared, Arlo could hear Dayton speaking quietly, presumably to accomplices through a communication device. Shipment ready in 20 minutes. Standard price. Triple quantity. A pause. No one suspects anything. The alien muscleheads and their human babysitters are too busy fighting each other to notice. Kira's expression darkened at the insult. She signaled to Arlo, indicating she would take the direct approach while he covered the rear exit. Arlo nodded, moving silently into position. He could hear Kira enter the facility, her voice carrying clearly. Security Officer Dayton. Interesting place for a midnight inspection. Dayton's response was immediate and violent. A blaster shot echoed through the facility, followed by the crash of equipment. Arlo rushed in to find Kira taking cover behind a storage tank, a scorch mark on the wall where her head had been moments before. Alliance security! Dayton shouted, his voice strained. "I'm investigating a breach. This alien was tampering with the water supply." "Strange," Arlo called from the doorway, his own sidearm drawn. "Since we've been watching you plant devices throughout the outpost for the past 3 days." Dayton spun toward Arlo's voice, firing wildly. The shots went wide, striking a control panel that exploded in a shower of sparks. Emergency lights activated, bathing the room in pulsing red. "You don't understand," Dayton said, backing toward a service corridor. "Do you know what they pay for water rights out here? More than Alliance will pay in a lifetime. So you risk hundreds of lives for profit," Kira snarled, emerging from cover. Her imposing figure seemed even more threatening in the red emergency lighting. "Stay back," Dayton warned, aiming his blaster at a large pressure tank. "One shot and this whole section depressurizes. We'll all be crushed." It was a desperate bluff, but effective. Arlo and Kira hesitated, giving Dayton time to back further down the service corridor. "He's getting away," Kira growled. "Not for long," Arlo replied, activating his communicator. "Security breach in Water Facility Sector 7. Officer Dayton is armed and dangerous. Lock down all exits." But Dayton had planned for contingencies. As the outpost alarms blared, the lights suddenly cut out completely. In the pitch darkness, they heard Dayton's footsteps retreating rapidly. "Night vision," Kira muttered. "He came prepared." "So did I," Arlo replied, pulling a small device from his utility belt. It projected a thermal overlay onto their field of vision. "Standard Alliance tactical gear. Follow me." They pursued Dayton through maintenance tunnels rarely used by anyone except engineering staff. The cramped spaces forced Kira to hunch uncomfortably, her larger frame not designed for such confined areas. "He's heading for the communications hub," Arlo realized as they tracked Dayton's heat signature. "Probably has a ship standing by." "Not if I can help it," Kira growled. The pursuit ended in the dimly lit technical substation beneath the communications array. Dayton had barricaded himself behind equipment racks, his blaster trained on the only entrance. "Back off," he shouted as Arlo and Kira approached. "I've got nothing to lose now." "That makes 2 of us," Kira replied, her voice dangerously calm. To Arlo's surprise, she holstered her weapon and stepped forward, directly into Dayton's line of fire. "What are you doing?" Arlo hissed. Kira ignored him, continuing her steady advance toward Dayton. "You called my warriors muscleheads," she said conversationally. "You think we're just brutes. No intelligence, no subtlety." Dayton fired a warning shot that sizzled past Kira's shoulder. "Next one goes through your head. Alien!" Kira didn't flinch. "What you don't understand about Terrak physiology," she continued, still advancing, "is that we have certain evolutionary advantages." Something changed in the air, a subtle shift in scent that made Arlo's hair stand on end. He'd heard rumors about Terrak biochemical abilities, but had dismissed them as exaggeration. Dayton's expression changed, confusion replacing fear. His blaster hand wavered slightly. What are you doing?" he stammered. "Terrak warriors can release combat pheromones," Kira explained, now close enough that Dayton could have touched her. "They affect certain neural pathways, make it difficult to focus, to resist questioning." Dayton's blaster clattered to the floor. His eyes had glazed slightly, his breathing shallow. "Who are you working with?" Kira asked, her voice soft but commanding. "Consortium traders," Dayton answered, his voice distant. "Black market water rights. Been siphoning resources for months." "Names," she demanded. "Contact is Velen Mox. Meets me at the old mining outpost, 50 kilometers west." Arlo quickly documented everything, transmitting the information to Alliance security. Within minutes, response teams were mobilized to apprehend Dayton's contacts. Kira stepped back, and the strange scent in the air gradually dissipated. Dayton blinked rapidly, horror dawning on his face as he realized what had happened. You can't do that. It's a violation of Alliance protocols. Mind control is forbidden." "Not mind control," Kira corrected, looking satisfied. Just biochemical persuasion, and nothing in the protocols about Terrak biology. Alliance security officers arrived to take Dayton into custody. As they led him away, he looked back at Arlo with contempt. Hiding behind an alien, pathetic excuse for a human? Arlo didn't respond. After the security team departed, he turned to Kira with newfound respect and wariness. You never mentioned that ability in any of our tactical briefings. Kira's head crest flattened slightly, her equivalent of a shrug. Some advantages are best kept secret until needed. Is that why your squad follows you so loyally? Pheromone control? Her expression hardened. That would be dishonorable. My warriors follow me because I've proven my worth in battle. The pheromones only work on other species, not on Terraks. I see, Arlo replied, not entirely convinced. Useful tactical advantage. One of many you've yet to learn, she said, studying him with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. You proved more valuable than expected, Lieutenant. Perhaps there is strength in your approach after all. The next morning, Arlo was surprised to receive a formal summons to the squad briefing. Usually, he had to insert himself into their planning sessions. When he arrived, the entire Terrak squad was assembled, standing at attention. Kira stood at the center, her posture formal. Lieutenant Arlo Reyes, she announced. Squad Terrak acknowledges your contribution to outpost security. Your tactical insight identified the threat. Your strategy captured the traitor. The squad thumped their chests in unison, a Terrak salute normally reserved for fellow warriors. Thank you, Captain, Arlo replied, genuinely moved by the gesture. It was a team effort. Indeed, Kira agreed. Which is why I have decided to formally include you in all squad operations moving forward. Not as an advisor, but as a tactical officer with full authority. This was unprecedented. No human had ever been granted such a position within a Terrak squad. The implications for Alliance-Terrak relations were significant. I'm honored, Arlo said, and I accept. The squad training that followed was different. The Terraks still outmatched Arlo physically, but they now listened to his tactical input. Even Sergeant Vork, the most skeptical of the group, acknowledged Arlo's value when his strategy for a simulated insurgent encounter resulted in 0 casualties. As the day ended, Kira requested Arlo join her for the traditional post-training meal. Another first. They sat in the officers' mess, conspicuous as the only human Terrak pair amid segregated tables. Your inclusion has already improved squad performance by 17%, Kira noted, consuming a protein-rich meal that would have been too dense for human digestion. Diversity of approach often yields better results, Arlo replied, picking at his own meal. We complement each other's strengths. Kira studied him with those intense amber eyes. I was wrong to call you weak, she said finally. Physical strength is only one form of power. Coming from a Terrak warrior, this was tantamount to a profound apology. Arlo nodded in acknowledgement. Cultural understanding takes time, he offered. We both had misconceptions. Had? Kira raised what would have been an eyebrow on a human. You speak as though all misconceptions are resolved. Aren't they? Kira set down her eating utensils, leaning slightly across the table. That strange cinnamon copper scent intensified. There is much about Terrak culture you still don't understand. Lieutenant, particularly regarding interpersonal relationships. Arlo felt a sudden warmth that had nothing to do with the room temperature. I'm always eager to learn, Captain. Are you? She held his gaze. Then meet me at my quarters after final shift. We have much to discuss. Throughout the remainder of his shift, Arlo found himself distracted by Kira's invitation. He'd heard rumors about Terrak-human relations. Of course. The Alliance officially encouraged cultural exchange and even interpersonal relationships between species. But actual instances were rare. Physiological and cultural differences created significant barriers. When he arrived at Kira's quarters that evening, He was surprised to find them decorated with what appeared to be traditional Terak ceremonial items. Weapons mounted on walls, dried plants hanging from the ceiling, and strange crystalline formations on various surfaces. Kira herself was dressed differently. Gone was the standard Alliance-issued uniform, replaced by a more traditional Terak garment, a form-fitting bodice of scaled leather and loose pants that emphasized her powerful physique. "You came," she noted, seeming pleased. "Many humans would have found excuses." "As I said, I'm eager to learn," Arlo replied, trying to maintain professional composure despite his racing pulse. Kira gestured for him to sit on a cushion across from her. Between them was a low table, holding a crystal carafe filled with amber liquid. "Terak fire nectar," she explained, pouring 2 small glasses. "It's compatible with human physiology, though you may find the effects intense." Arlo accepted the glass cautiously. The liquid gave off a spicy aroma that made his eyes water slightly. "To new understanding," Kira offered, raising her glass. "To new understanding," Arlo echoed, taking a small sip. The nectar burned like whiskey laced with chili peppers, then spread a pleasant warmth throughout his body. He managed not to cough, which seemed to impress Kira. "Most humans cannot tolerate even a taste," she observed. "You continue to surprise me, Lieutenant." "Arlo," he corrected. "If we're off duty, I think first names are appropriate." "Arlo," she repeated, the name sounding exotic in her rumbling voice. "And you may call me Kira, though few outside my family have that privilege." She leaned forward, her amber eyes reflecting the room's low lighting. "What do you know of Terak mating customs, Arlo?" The direct question caught him off guard. "Only what's in the cultural briefings. That Teraks value strength and compatibility. That relationships are initiated by the female, who chooses based on genetic and personal criteria." Kira nodded slowly. "The briefings are accurate, but incomplete. What they don't explain is the importance of balance." "Balance?" "In ancient times, Terak females would choose the strongest males, those who could provide protection and healthy offspring. But strength alone created problems. Too much aggression, too little planning." She sipped her nectar thoughtfully. "Over generations, our selection criteria evolved. We began to value balance, physical prowess complemented by intelligence, courage tempered by wisdom." Arlo considered this. "That makes evolutionary sense. Balanced traits would produce more successful offspring and societies." "Precisely." Kira's head crest expanded slightly, a sign of approval or excitement. "Yet, finding true balance is rare. Most Terak males still emphasize physical power above all else. It is predictable." The implications of her words hung in the air between them. Arlo took another sip of nectar to collect his thoughts. "And humans?" he asked carefully. "How do we factor into this balance?" Kira stood abruptly, moving to a view screen that showed the desert landscape beyond the outpost. The twin moons cast silver light across the red sands, creating an otherworldly beauty. "Interspecies relationships were once taboo," she said without turning. "Considered unnatural, unproductive. But as we've expanded beyond our world, perspectives have changed. Some Terak females have found that human males offer different kinds of strength, complementary traits that create new forms of balance." She turned to face him, her powerful silhouette backlit by the moonlight. "When I called you weak, I was wrong twice over. First, in failing to recognize your particular strengths. Second, in denying my attraction to those strengths." Arlo set down his glass, his mouth suddenly dry despite the nectar. "Attraction?" "Is it not obvious?" Kira asked, a hint of vulnerability showing through her usual confidence. "Why else would I challenge you so persistently? Why else would I integrate you into my squad, bring you to my private quarters?" She approached him with the same deliberate movement she'd used when confronting Dayton. This time, however, the scent she emitted was different, still cinnamon and copper, but with something deeper, more primal. Terak females emit different pheromones for different purposes, she explained, noting his reaction. Combat, intimidation, negotiation, and mating. Each has its purpose. Arlo felt lightheaded, but not unpleasantly so. Are you using them now? Not to manipulate, Kira assured him, kneeling before him so their eyes were level. Merely to communicate what words cannot fully express. You can refuse without consequence. I would never dishonor either of us with coercion. And what exactly are you communicating? Arlo asked, though he suspected he already knew. Kira's voice dropped to a near whisper. That I want you, Arlo Reyes, not despite your differences, but because of them. Your tactical mind, your adaptability, your courage in standing against me when everyone else submitted. She reached out, her scaled hand hovering just above his cheek, not quite touching. If you are truly strong in your way, not mine, then breed me. The blunt request, so characteristic of Terak directness, still managed to shock Arlo. He had anticipated some form of proposition, but not this explicit invitation. That's quite an offer, he managed, trying to maintain composure. But there are biological considerations. Our species can't actually reproduce together. Kira made a sound that might have been laughter. Reproduction is separate from mating. The act itself has value, pleasure, bonding, exchange of energies. Many Terak females choose mates for compatibility, not procreation. I see, Arlo said, though in truth, he was still processing the situation. And your squad? How would they view this arrangement? With respect, Kira replied confidently. You've proven your worth to them. Some might be surprised by my choice, but none would question it. Among Teraks, the female selection is sacred. She waited, patient despite the intensity of her gaze. Your answer, Lieutenant. Arlo considered everything. The cultural implications, the personal ramifications, the sheer unlikelihood of the scenario. 6 months ago, this woman had embodied everything hostile about his assignment. Now she was offering something both primitive and profound. Yes, he said finally, but on one condition. Kira's head crest flattened slightly in surprise. You place conditions on my offer? Equal partnership, Arlo clarified. Not just physically, but in all things. I won't be a subordinate in the field and a mate in private. Balance, as you said. For a moment, Kira was still. Then her crest expanded fully, a sign of respect and excitement. Accepted, she said with a fierce grin. You understand better than I expected. What followed was both familiar and utterly foreign. The basic choreography of intimacy transcended species. But the details were a discovery for both. Kira's scaled skin was surprisingly soft in certain places, rough in others. Her strength required careful restraint. His human fragility, a constant consideration. The pheromones she released intensified everything. Sensations, emotions, connections. Arlo found himself responding in ways he never had with human partners, as though some primal part of his brain recognized signals his conscious mind couldn't process. Afterward, they lay together on her sleeping platform, an unlikely pair finding unexpected harmony. The desert wind howled outside, but within these walls, they had created something neither had anticipated when they first met. In Terak tradition, Kira murmured, her voice softer than Arlo had ever heard it. New mates mark their union on the dwelling they share, a symbol that others recognize and respect. What kind of mark? Arlo asked, tracing the pattern of scales along her shoulder. Usually a combination of personal symbols. She rose, retrieving a small knife and a vial of pigment from a ceremonial box. Mine is the crescent blade, symbol of my family line. And mine would be? Whatever represents your essence. She considered him thoughtfully. Perhaps the tactical display symbol? The one you use to mark advantageous positions? Arlo smiled at the suggestion, so perfectly representative of how she saw him. That seems appropriate. Together, they carved a small but intricate design beside the door of her quarters, a crescent blade intertwined with a tactical position marker. Kira mixed the pigment with a drop of blood from each of them, then sealed it into the carving. Now all who pass will know, she said with satisfaction. A mating bond has been formed. Will this cause complications with Alliance protocols? Arlo asked, suddenly concerned about regulations regarding fraternization. Kira shrugged, unconcerned. Alliance encouraged cultural integration. They can hardly complain when it succeeds beyond expectation. As dawn broke over Outpost Nova 7, casting red-gold light across the desert, Arlo found himself contemplating the strange path that had led to this moment. From being derided as a weak male, to becoming a respected tactical officer, and now, improbably, the chosen mate of a Terrak captain. What are you thinking? Kira asked, observing his contemplative expression. That strength and weakness are rarely what they seem, he replied honestly, and that the universe has a peculiar sense of humor. Kira's rumbling laugh filled the room. On that, Lieutenant, we are in perfect agreement. Outside, the outpost was coming to life, unaware that the relationship between humans and Terraks had just evolved in ways no diplomatic protocol could have anticipated. The challenges ahead would be significant: cultural differences to navigate, prejudices to overcome, personal boundaries to establish. But as they prepared for the morning briefing, now as partners in every sense, Arlo felt an unexpected optimism. In this harsh desert outpost, something new and hopeful had taken root. Balance had been found where none seemed possible. And for now, that was enough.